Ahoy mateys, this is Stevie Wayne coming at you, bringing you another wonderful 40s tune to get you through the night. But I'm pretty sure on October 4th, Saturday night, I rewatched this particular movie. I have the DVD, just the MGM DVD of this particular title, which is The Fog. John Carpenter's The Fog. And I'm pretty sure, I'm sure that it's on Blu-ray courtesy of Scream Factory, I'm pretty sure, but I've never been a huge fan of The Fog. Now this of course is the John Carpenter movie, the follow-up to his hugely successful, independently produced movie called Halloween that he made. You may have heard of it. It took place on that one holiday. And so a couple years later, this is his follow-up movie. Him and Deborah Hill team up once again to co-produce and co-write this particular venture. And Jamie Lee Curtis worked out so well for him in Halloween that maybe he figures that he's not comfortable enough to make a movie without her yet. And she's good, back in these days, and I guess I don't know why I said back in those days as if she was bad any other time, but whatever. Back in the day, 1980, that's when this movie came out. I mean, she was pretty cute and stuff, so why wouldn't you have her in the movie anyway? Now, The Fog is not, I grew up with Halloween and all kinds of Friday the 13th and Hellraiser and all this kind of stuff, and The Fog is not a movie, for whatever reason, I ever sought out when I was a kid. It's not a movie I grew up with. I didn't really see The Fog probably until I was, 23 or 24 for the very first time. I guess the idea of it, and the poster, the original poster, and was also on that, was this a Avco Embassy? I want to say this is like an Avco Embassy movie, so it would have been on that tape, the VHS tape, with Jamie Lee Curtis, low angle of her pushed against the door, with this, and the fog coming in. It just never, back when I was a kid and getting into horror, for me it was all about just the cool, killers, Pinhead or Michael Myers, Leatherface, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees. So, I mean, to think of an idea, when I was a kid getting into horror, the idea of just this fog, which isn't really only fog, it's these 100-year-old sailor corpse zombies slash spirits, whatever, within the fog that do the evil deeds. But so I never saw this when I was a kid. So granted, there's that bit of what I would consider you're partial to things potentially, maybe if you grew up with them more so than you would be if you saw it later. So I don't know, maybe that pertains to this particular title for me, maybe not, but I've never, ever since I've seen The Fog, I've never necessarily been a huge fan of this. There's people you like and there's people you don't, and from my experience, there's movies you like and movies you don't, and this is one that I don't dislike, but I don't necessarily like. It's kind of just mid-ground. Having rewatched it just a week ago, one thing I am taken by is, obviously John Carpenter comes back to do, 2 years later, to do his own score again, which of course he will continue to do for the majority or, almost all of his movies in this, after Halloween. And he takes a different approach, which is more of a just instead of this, he takes a different approach, which is I like what he came up with for this movie. It's a very, in general, I kind of really like more or less sort of the John Carpenter scores that he comes up with for his movies, because it's a rare instance where, an actual filmmaker makes his own music. Usually you'll get, a filmmaker, a director, a writer, a producer, director will get someone, some musician who you're familiar with their work, and it'll sound like that. Well, what's interesting about John Carpenter's movies, the ones that he scores, is they not only look and feel like John Carpenter movies, but they sound like John Carpenter movies as far as the music goes. So I really do like the music, and I think the movie opens with that fantastic, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now, but this old British guy who did this brief cameo, brief appearance. John Houseman, I think it is, who's this great, you know, whatever the hell he is, old sailor sitting by the, you know, the seashore, telling these kids, babysitting these kids or whatever around a campfire, telling them the story. You know, just 5 minutes before, you know, the 100th anniversary, before the clock strikes midnight, the 100th anniversary of this particular town, which is probably just obviously more or less fictional town for the movie, which is, they say it so many times in the movie you think I'd remember, but it escapes me right now, the name of the town. But I've got the kind of mentality who really doesn't necessarily in movies necessarily grasp or like to have a whole plot or past story simply spoken. Because I mean, I've seen it, I don't know how many times now, 5, 6, whatever, 7 over the years, 7 times, and it's still, I barely know what the hell, you know, even though I've heard the same goddamn story told over and over, the whole basically history of why this is going on is only revealed in nothing but just dialogue, you know, and just because of the the particular mentality I have, I'm more of a visual guy or something, I don't know. But anyway, as far as I can gather, like, there was this ship coming in full of these sailors, 6 sailors or whatever. I might have details wrong, and, you know, feel free to correct me if you want, but whatever. And these people, these villagers or whatever, who maybe didn't want them, you know, coming and poisoning their town or community, set this false fire, you know, so they'd crash into the rocks. Try going into John Houseman there, and basically, you know, kill them because they didn't want them as a part of their village. I don't know, whatever. So 100 years, if that's the basic gist of it. So basically 100 years later, these ghosts, these spirits slash zombies, I think it might be six of them, who were, you know, ran in deliberately into the rocks by, you know, this town or whatever, come back 100 years later for revenge. And so unlike Halloween, which I really respond to, which is just kind of like a out of nowhere, just whatever kind of like no explanation or little to no explanation, which I really like. I responded to that. You know, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill felt like the second time out, or at least the second time out, you know, the next time following the hugely successful Halloween, that we have to, you know, kind of go by the numbers, and this time let's create, you know, our own little, you know, sea shanty ghost tale thing, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's whatever, you know, some thought, you can tell some thought went into it. And is it Antonio Bay, maybe? Antonio Bay? I don't know. That sounds like it. That could potentially be this fictional, potentially fictional town in the movie. But, okay, that's enough blabbing and blabbing. So, I mean, I really, you know, when I very first saw it, you know what? Oh, I bet you, you know what? I bet you know. I bet you I first saw this movie, like, when I was in my late teens, actually, on Laserdisc. I bet I rented it from Video Update, because I can remember really liking the opening. I still do. I mean, I still think the opening is really cool and almost Stanley Kubrick, and the way there's, you know, the music would fade and you'll just see, like, after, it's like 5 minutes between like midnight and the 5 after, isn't it, where things kind of just go goofy, where it's just like, you know, the gas pump light will come on, the elevator will go up, and the gas dispenser will just come out and start dispensing, and then all the horns, you know, go off on the car dealership place and on the cars, and all kinds of goofy stuff happens for 5 minutes, you know, between, like I say, between midnight and 5 after or whatever. And I kind of liked that. It was just like, you know, then they'll show a shot of whatever, the car dealer, and it'll just be like a credit, and then it'll go off, and then, I mean, it's like there's no music during this scene. And, you know, of course we got the wonderful, fantastic, what's his name, Tom Atkins, who's just this, like, I don't know, he obviously he'll appear in a John Carpenter production later in the Halloween 3. But Tom Atkins just, I don't know, there's something about him. And oh, he also appears in his next movie, I think Escape from LA, just briefly, or Escape from New York, sorry, and stuff like that. So Tom Atkins is kind of a John Carpenter player every now and then, whatever, in the early 80s and stuff. But, okay, so I don't just do scene for scene of this movie, I have to just get on with it and basically say, having rewatched it a week ago, it's just the exact same, you know, it's pretty much the exact same experience. I mean, go figure, it's the same movie every time I watch it, which is, it's just like this random, just whatever. And I don't have a problem, I actually kind of like just random whatever. And Tom Atkins is driving, he picks up Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's just like, are you weird? Yes. Oh, good, the last guy was so normal, I almost, whatever. You know, and then the glass just breaks, and it's all this just crazy nothingness. Oh, don't let me forget, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, Janet Leigh's in this movie, and the fantastic Hal Holbrook is in a funny part as like Father. Shit, I can't even remember. You know, I want to say Delaney, I want to say Father Karras, whatever. You got all these fathers from all these other horror movies. I don't know which one's in this movie. It's Father Holbrook, we'll just say. And a very weeny teeny John Carpenter cameo, man. At the very beginning, this, you know, this guy is working for the father because the father can't do this himself. He's busy sitting and getting drunk. This little long-haired guy is none other than John Carpenter, and he does a, this might be his only, like, I don't know, appearance in one of his movies. I don't know, I haven't seen every single one of them, but he's just like, can I get paid? Yeah, it's just like funny. So John Carpenter has a little cameo and goes away, but Hal Holbrook's funny, and so basically, you know, all hell breaks loose on the 100th anniversary of this day on Antonio Bay, and you know, when thinking back on it, there's so many. It's kind of a cool tale, and there's so many things that are admirable about it. I imagine this is like Northern California. I don't know exactly where this is filmed, but you know, Northern California or something like that. Some of the vistas and the shots of just the ocean side and everything like that are just, you know, breathtaking and amazing. And the set, that lighthouse set that, you know, that Adrian has to walk all the way down them steps, that's like, you know, where the radio the radio station is in this lighthouse and stuff. I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's so competent, you know, they create their own little world and everything like that so competently, but for some reason, I just, every time I watch it, I just have this, I come away with this feeling of having just watched something which is just like 90 minutes of these people, all these bored characters just sitting around, and it's just like, although stuff does happen, you know, like, don't let me forget to mention the very first time, I believe, appearing in a John Carpenter movie, the duo, you know, having just come from, you know, years prior doing their own Drive-In Massacre, and then in California, then having worked on a couple of Bill Rebane movies like Alpha Incident and The Capture of Bigfoot. They came back to California and actually found themselves in a small part in the director of, you know, the director of Halloween's follow-up movie to Halloween, which is kind of cool. So you got John Goff and George Buck Flower in a interesting part, and one of them, I don't know, more memorable or event scenes in the movie, which is the first couple kills in the movie. I guess the whole the whole premise is like, I think 6 of them died 100 years ago, so now they have to come back and kill 6 of the people, you know, descendants of whoever killed them 100 years prior or whatever, and if also, if they're lucky enough, get the gold or whatever that was theirs or whatever. Because on that little piece of driftwood the kid finds, he's like, you know, briefly says 6 must die, I on it. So I mean, I just come away with this underwhelming feeling of just like people sitting around, and Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee Curtis in the bottom of this boat, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they're just like telling stories. I don't know, it's just like, as much as stuff does happen in the movie, and it never necessarily gets boring, at the same time it's like, it doesn't seem like, this is one of these movies for me that's kind of a mind wipe, where it's just like, what the hell happened? It's just like people driving around doing this and that, and you know, Nancy Loomis driving, you know, Janet Leigh to the thing, and just cutesy dialogue. I mean, there's cutesy dialogue and stuff in the movie, but it's just like, you know, I don't know, you know, admittedly the stuff that they pull off with the fog in some cases, you know, shooting it in reverse and having fog enter into things and do all this and that. I mean, you know, obviously pre-CG, but there's some optical effects in here as well when the fog has to cover, you know, big areas, specific areas. There's opticals in here, but, you know, a lot of this fog stuff is actual just on camera, you know, fog wrangling, if you will. And but I like I say, I can't stress how much the movie is just replete with a bunch of empty characters, is what it boils down to. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, it's just very much like Prom Night, which I think is a movie that she did the same year, or came out the same year. It just seems like she's barely in it, and she might be the first billing, and I mean, everyone seems like they're barely in it. It's weird. It's like this ensemble movie, but no one really comes through with any kind of moment or performance or any moment in the movie where it's like, oh, that's memorable, man. That part, man, where the whatever happened is like, ooh, cool. It's like the kills are so, or it's like the horror scenes are so, I don't know. It's like they're just like muted in a way. And while I'm on the subject, ironically the other side of the spectrum, I think John Carpenter felt, because this is 1980, this is like, you know, I don't know if Friday the 13th had come out yet or anything like that yet, but John Carpenter, I'm pretty sure he felt at this point, or there was some pressure from the studio or something like that, to put a little more on-screen violence in it. So, you know, when John Goff and George Buckflower get offed and stuff, it's kind of, I mean, it's not Halloween style. It's more like, you know, in your face. There's more little more in your face kind of stuff in this movie and stuff. So I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, this review was kind of all over the place, very much like the movie. It's just like that's about it. One of the biggest strengths for the movie for me is the score. Like just the, you know, I can't do it, but just the, you know, I think the score magnificently what's that word? Accommodates? Whatever. I'm getting over a cold. Give me a break. Magnificently accompanies, you know, the movie and enhances it in a way that is really, you know, really great. I think the music is one of the best things in the movie, and I think, I don't know, it's almost like the ending, you know, the ending with Adrienne Barbeau getting attacked and stuff in her lighthouse and the assault on the church. I almost feel partially like it was almost too ambitious. Like, I don't know if I felt like John Carpenter really necessarily pulled it off. I don't know. There's gonna be all kinds of fog lovers out there who are just gonna be like, you son of a bitch, you know. This is typing on the keyboard. Which is your right to, you know, to call me, you know, well, it's not your right to call me names, but to like the movie just as much as it's my right to not really get too worked up about it. So at the end of the day, I think we will go 2.5 stars. I mean, there's stuff I like about it. It's this cool atmospheric, you know, Northern California, if that's where it's filmed, Northern California. If not, it's somewhere in California. Great vistas and shots of whatever, and of course, you know, this is the first movie where John Carpenter, potentially maybe the movie he met Adrienne Barbeau on, I don't know, which of course, unfortunately, he would end up trading in, what's her name? Deborah Hill for Adrienne Barbeau as far as like a romantic interest or a squeeze, if you will. And you can't blame him. I mean, it's Adrienne Barbeau after all, and I just feel bad for Deborah Hill. But whatever, it all worked out, and then Deborah Hill died, and whatever. 2.5 stars for The Fog. It's one that doesn't really rustle my feathers or whatever. Like I said, I don't know if that's a term that makes any sense. But it doesn't do a whole hell of a lot for me, and it never has, and it probably never will until the 3D conversion of it comes out. That's a joke. I mean, that's just kind of a joke. So I'm just trying to, I don't know, having gotten over a cold and still being at the very end of it, I don't know if I covered everything I wanted to, but probably, this review is probably way too long, and I don't know why my reviews have been so long lately. Maybe it's just the way maybe it's just the stars or the way of the world. But thank you very much for watching my review of The Fog. And of course there is a remake of The Fog that came out in the mid, 2005 or 6 or 7 or something like that. And I haven't, actually no, I was working at a video store when it came out on video, and I think I rented it and started it and just turned it off like after 15 minutes or something like. Or maybe I only saw the trailer. I can't remember. No, I think I did rent it and turned it off after 15 minutes. So I didn't fully see the remake, which is just like whatever anyways. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, what? Jack-o'-lantern over there says, have a spooky Halloween. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.